Welcome tonight to ArtNow. I'm Liza Yerk and I'm instructor of the course. I want to begin by acknowledging that Western University is located on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Chunongtong nations, on lands connected with the London Township and Sombre Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. This land continues to be home to diverse Indigenous peoples whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors of our society. I want to take a moment to thank Forest City Gallery for partnering with us on this talk. Teresa Carlissimo, who is the director of FCG, couldn't be here tonight, but I want to just say thank you very much to her, and again to the gallery for partnering with us. Fanny Latreille is our amazing speaker tonight, all the way from Montreal. She's joining us, so we're super lucky to have her here. Her show, Youth Pavilions, closes at FCG on Saturday, so you've got a couple more days on Friday, tomorrow. Tomorrow by 5. Okay, so go and see it if you haven't seen it. It's a great show. So I'm going to introduce Fanny. Fanny Latreille resides in the unceded territory of the Tiohtià, Montreal. Her interdisciplinary practice revolves around a documentary approach to the exhibition. By declining a subject in several forms, she materializes a mental aggregation by which she tries to define the cultural meaning of the image. In general, it's the culture, history, politics relationship that motivates her research creation process. Thus, she has a marked interest in the cultural and social manifestations that take us beyond time. So please join me in welcoming Fanny tonight.
I'm Fanny. Nice to meet you all. I've chose bright colors and zebra pants, so you pay attention to me. And you will not remember at the end of the evening all of my francophone brain farts. So please, pardon my French. Liza really introduced me very well about my practice. So I don't define myself as a medium-based artist. I prefer to work on a subject, like to do an investigation, and let the subject just indicate which medium is best for it. So I navigate through sculpture, 2D works, print making, photography, 3D, but sometimes I do some 3D works, like digital work, not sculptural 3D, but that also, and video art and installation art. But I'm none of the above. I'm just like everything at the same time. I'm a generalist. That's the problem of my life. I'll introduce you to the plan of this talk, and after we can have a Q&A session. So I'll ask you to keep your questions to yourself until we're there, and I'll be very happy to answer to them. So we'll talk about the context that brought to life youth pavilions, and we'll talk about nostalgia, counterculture, and then we'll talk about some of the works that I made for the exhibition, but also some works that I made for other projects after. Okay, so Youth Pavilions was a very long process. And you'll see how it started kind of in 2014 to finally ends now today at Forest City Gallery, because I think it's the last time I'll show this project, but we'll see. So we'll start with 2012, the student strike in Quebec. You heard about it? Have you heard about it? No?
You're fine.
Oh, sorry. I don't have the right one. Yeah, some context. So have you heard about the student strike in Quebec that happened in 2012? You were there? Some of you? No? Okay. It was a big thing, and I was 22 at that time. I was an undergrad student at UQAM, so University of Quebec in Montreal, and I was part of the faculty association that voted first for the strike. The strike was against the increase of tuition fees for university and college degrees. And it was led, the increase of tuition fees was led by the Liberal government at the time, which was how you say that? The chef was Jean Charest. I don't know if you remember. He was also a candidate to be the chef of the Canadian Conservative Party, but it's Poilievre instead, which is worse. Oh well, I'm sorry. I shouldn't do comments like that. I don't know to who I'm talking. So yeah, so we were protesting for about 8 months. So from February to September. And actually the protest, like the strike ended because we pushed for an election, which resulted in the which overthrown the Liberal government and got elected another party for like not a very long time, like 8 months, but still, it was kind of a win. And yeah, so we were a group of young people fighting, so we won't spend too much money to get an education. And we were tear gassed, we were hit, and we were arrested by the police because we were in the streets. But at the same time, we were meeting new people, and we were expanding our social groups and fortifying our connections. So it was like a coming of age moment for my generation, which is millennials. And yeah, it's a moment where we developed our political beings, even if we were not really politically involved at the moment, like as a 22-year-old or just as anyone. And at some point, like you'll be able to see now, we were protesting every single night in the streets in downtown Montreal. I remember one weekend, it was extraordinary. There was a night protest, but it was at the same time as there was a punk music festival. So there was a fire for 3 straight days at a corner of the street in Quartier Latin, which is downtown. It's like if there was a fire for 3 straight days at the corner of Richmond and University here, or like a cool spot, you know, with bars, clubs, everything. So it was very fun. It was, I say it was very fun. It was exciting, but it was very scary. It was really, really scary. We were being a bit paranoid. Some people were tracked. But yeah. And the biggest protest drew 400,000 people in the streets of Montreal. So it's funny because, we're in Ontario right now. I think it's normal that you don't really know about that event. That happened like 10 years ago, 11 years ago. But last year I was working at the University Gallery, and one of the students, like you, she didn't remember the student strike, even if she was, let's say, 12 at the time. And even if during one of the biggest riots in the history of Quebec, she helped some protesters take refuge in her home in Victoriaville because they were tear gassed. They got shot by, rubber bullets and arrested by the police. So she didn't remember until we talked about the event. And I just think it's funny how we can easily erase big events like that just because we are not the people who create media discourse or memories of some kind. So, some more context. After this period, I went about with my life. We just went back to school, did our stuff, you know. And then fast forward to 2014, I went to a venue that was also a DIY museum, archival collection of poetry and text from Quebec authors and artists. And I was there with some friends that I met during the protest. And I saw a newspaper clip that's the place. It doesn't exist anymore. It's very sad. And I saw I saw two paper clips framed on a wall. One was from a person that was having a hostile and pejorative discourse about young people that were protesting in 67. And the other one was the answer to the open letter of the other guy. So kind of an adult discourse and a younger discourse saying like, no, but we're in the street to do this, to do that, for you, for like everybody. And it reminded me of the media coverage and the open letters we were reading during 2012, during the student strike. So that's the kind of hostility and pejorative speech I saw and we read and we received from family and, you know, random people that were like virtual people online, in newspapers, on TV, or in the street. And I thought it was kind of funny because, again, funny but not really funny, like the fire, but the fire was kind of cool still. Because during the student strike, some people who were like having the hostile speech were the young people in 67. And I felt like during our strike, our generational moment, they turned against us, you know, while some adults turned against them when they were young. And at the same time, what we were fighting for, it was just to maintain the gains that they struggled for. Because I think it's similar here in Ontario, but because Quebec, just for some context, even more context, in Quebec, educational system is very young. It started like the public universities were built in 68. It's very, very young. And it's because this generation, they really fought for it, you know. So I was like, wow, how could that happen? Like, where's the clash coming from? Why cannot we talk to each other? Like, we're doing the same thing. Like, why are we like fighting against each other? We should just be together, fight together. Why is there a generational clash? So it also happened at a time where millennials, so my generation, we were criticized a lot as we were entering the social spaces like workspace. And I guess it's happening to you too, right? Right now. And we were also experimenting with alternative like communal living or non-monogamy or polyamory or queer, trans, and non-binary identities. And to me, all of that felt like countercultural. And so it added a layer to my misunderstanding of that clash. So my project, Youth Pavilion, aims for generational reconciliation. And I do that by exploring what is counterculture and how counterculture can be also lived by another generation in another period. You take so many notes. You can just listen, right? Are they having an exam on it?
They have to write a response.
Just write your, your questions now. Listen to Liza. So, do you know what is counterculture? No? Do you know what is Woodstock? The festival? You saw the documentary? The old one, not the one in the 90s. Not the one with Fred Durst. That's I don't know. I just found it in the internet, like this morning. So counterculture is a Western paradigm. Thank you. Of struggle and social emancipation. We can think about the Berkeley protest in California, but also May 68 in France, and your art students, so Guy Debord and International Situationist, that really helped to build some of the, how we say slogan of May 68. Thank you, Jessica. Jessica is like my fellow Montrealer helper, speech helper.
Samantha was at Concordia.
Oh, hi. It is counterculture is it's characterized in general by the discontinuity with the culture of the previous generation. It is polymorphic, and it manifests itself in a heterogeneous way. So it can be, adopting Buddhism as your religion. Bob Dylan was a big counterculture artist. Who else? Janis Joplin. You see the period, right? So hippies, the new left. It's also experimenting with psychedelic drugs. It's also rural communes, free love, the protest against the Vietnam Wars, and so on and so on. So do you have a good image of what that period is? You see it in your head? Because you saw it in movies, right? You know, right? Long hair, monokini. That's more French, but... And in Quebec, it was different. It started in '67 on the edge of the Universal Exhibition of Montreal. It was also a moment where there was many student strikes. Like they opened the Cégep network, and after like 6 months, they went on strike because they were, it's not enough. We want more. Also, there was many magazines that were created, like this one, Mamie's, which is very nice. If you want to look at it, this is the beginning of the world. This is the weed special. This is the number 2. I don't know. There's no team for this one. So Mamie's was it's hard to explain because I don't know any similar magazine that exists right now. It was kind of Vice. Vice before the owner got into like alt-right. So Mamie's was like countercultural Quebec Vice magazine. Back when it was cool. And also there was the International Meeting of Counterculture of Montreal, which is very weird to have an international conference for counterculture. And during this event that took place in '75, there was like Allen Ginsberg, William Burroughs, and many other artists, local artists. So counterculture in Quebec existed. It happened between '67 and '78, which is kind of ironic because counterculture in the United States, and the movement is coming from the United States. It ended in '69, so we're always a bit late, you know? So I'm talking about all of this counterculture. I'm asking you like, oh, you know, you have an image from movies, blah, blah, blah. And all of these images can come from nostalgia, but I was really aiming so that youth pavilions does not act as compensatory nostalgia. First time I say that concept in English. It's kind of one of my concepts actually, so don't look at it on Google or don't search it in a book. So yeah, I thought that those who were once young and those who are young today, we can develop a nostalgic relationship to the 60s and 70s. Because with distance, the countercultural era seems smoother and better organized. It's less like, it's more heterogeneous. Thank you, Jessica. I had a coffee before, huh? And it becomes like an archetype of itself from which one can find an escape, like it was so much better back in the days. But this type of nostalgia aims for a symbolic return to the past and is a wish to find what would have been lost in the meanders of the acceleration of society. And I call that compensatory. But Youth Pavilions as a project is not that, because it aims to repair the shortcomings of the present by an affective return to the past. So it's not like, oh, toss aside present, past was so much better. It's like, no, okay, we'll think about the present from the past, but not because the past was better, but to make the present better. Present time. So, did you see the exhibition, right? Who saw it? Aha! Okay. So I'm talking about a bunch of stuff, but you don't even know what the show is. So, are you lost a bit? Should I go get some pictures? How do you feel? Pictures. You want pictures? Okay. So, the show is constituted of many pieces, many works, and this is the main work. It's a double screen, 2-channel video with sound of 2 actors talking to each other. And this video is based on interviews I did during a self-directed residency in Le Récif. I'll just do a short, I'll pass through the work and we'll go back to the order of things. No. That's another work in the show. That's another work in the show. That's not. That's another work in the show. That's not. Okay, let's go back. So you remember, I did a video, a 2-screen video, based on interviews I did during a self-directed residency in Le Récif. So Le Récif is kind of, how we say that? It's a kind of it's a collective project. It's a collective living space. not collaborative, like collective, like a commune, but with like actual language, like from actuality, like from now. Not actual, but yeah. It's also a popular school, and it's a place where lots of activists and artists live. It was founded after the second student strike in 2015, because we like strikes. As a place to so people can go live alternative and sustainable lifestyles, and also be an example for other people in the community. So that's in the countryside of Quebec. It's very far from Montreal. It's like 6 hours, 7 maybe. And it also serves as a transit for people, activists or artists that wants to live in the countryside in this area and that are coming from the city. This is the village. It's very beautiful. And so I did interviews. Okay. So I did interviews with the people who live there. And there was in total 4 people I interviewed. And I asked them, okay, what is the project for you? What is your aim? Why you do that? You know, how does it take form? You know, general questions like that, but also more specific, like, what are you politically standing for? What are the house rules? How do you vote for the house rules? How do you share stuff? Because in this place, everything was based on sharing skills, spaces, and resources. So we all share the chores and the food, and there was also like, and all the, you know, organizing shows and doing a garden, but also, okay, we'll have a yoga space, okay, we'll build it together. You know, this kind of arrangement, living arrangement. And also there was a neighbor. His name was André Ouellet, and he was a former member of La Plaine Commune, which was like 30 minutes away from Tiohtià. But that man was like 75, and La Plaine Commune, it lasted from 72 to 84. So it was in the countercultural period in Quebec. And a bit like the same way as with Le Récif, they were a bunch of students. They decided to go to the countryside. They were doing political theater and clown shows. They were doing craft, but they also were doing some gardens. And so I went to him. We talked. I recorded it. And same questions. What were you aiming for? How did you share the resources? How politically it worked, like internally, like what was the process to take decisions and everything. She wants to give you number 2. Yeah. And it's very interesting because it's the longest, it's a really long-lasting commune, because commune, they don't last 10 years normally. And it was really inspired by what was happening in the USA at the time. And it's a good example of the phenomenon that was spreading in rural Quebec. So for Commune de la Plaine, but also for Le Récif, which is not said the same way, the revolution on the scale of life was carried out by the absolute pooling of goods and resources, direct democracy, the abolition of leadership and self-sufficiency. These were solutions to develop a political and economic alternative at the time, and still. So I had a bunch of footage from these interviews, but like I hired actors to play the interviews because there was some issues with using the footage. First, I felt like I needed to preserve the anonymity of the people I filmed, especially at Le Récif, since there were lots of activists, you know, like using black bloc strategies, living there, or like doing blocus on gas exploitation. Company and stuff like that. And also, I had many voices for Le Récif, but I had just one voice for La Commune de la Plaine. And I kind of needed to flatten that, not to have like too many voices one side and just one the other side. And the other issue I had is that I really didn't want to create a spokesperson figure with the people I was showing in my video and my project. And I had also to rearrange the answers I got so I can put more emphasis on the similarities in their answers to my questions. So I decided to transcribe the interviews on little papers and place them together like a puzzle to rearrange them by themes and write a script for actors with it. And it results in creating better discursive links. So again, that's a picture in the gallery. And maybe you can see how like I gave them similar clothing. They have similar backgrounds. So it shows that it's fake, you know, that it's not a real interview. But the way it's filmed, they were filmed separately, not together, but they each had to do reaction shots. So when they had a prompter, and they were saying their text, and when they were not speaking, they were able to read the other actor text, and they were just doing like that. So when you put them in a corner like this, it looks like a dialogue, but it's not. It's all fake. And yeah, and I had to cast them also. So you can see, I'm sorry, I don't have the subtitle version, but credits.
Ça faisait longtemps que moi puis un gars qui habitait au Loft Moreau, on se disait que ça serait vraiment cool
It
d'avoir
doesn't
un
work the
espace
same way
d'entraide,
when they're
de
side by
création qui
side.
est non compétitif, comme ça l'était les Loft Moreau à l'époque. Mais pour nous, c'était vraiment important que ça soit en région pour miser surtout sur le bien-être à travers la nature. Pour qu'on puisse être capable de se retirer du trop-plein de stimuli qui vient avec la ville. On disait que ça serait vraiment sain pour un collectif de se retrouver en milieu rural.
Quand j'étais au cégep, je vivais en appartement avec 2 filles et un gars qui a été cofondateur de la commune. Je crois que c'est nous autres, les 2 gars qui avons eu l'idée à l'origine. Puis, il y a du monde de la troupe de théâtre du cégep dont je faisais partie qui se sont joints au projet de commune.
So he's telling that
Quand on a quitté
he
Montréal,
was in
on
a
était à peu
theater
près
group
4-5
and
personnes.
they did the commune.
On n'avait pas de but
project.
précis ni
And
d'objectif
she
commun
was
à ce
telling
moment-là.
that
Il y a une chose qui était certaine.
She was
On voulait vivre les choses.
an activist in
hors
Montreal, and they said that they
Au
thought
début,
that
la
it would
commune
be
était
great
dans
to
le
go
rang
on
hors à l'élevage.
in the countryside.
On avait acheté une maison avec une grange et un garage.
Bien, moi, j'avais une idée de ce que ce serait l'esprit.
So yeah, so you have like a flat version, but when you have it in a corner, it works like much more better because you don't see the editing because your head is always doing this, or you see it but less. And they really look like they're facing each other, like they're looking at each other because when I filmed it, I asked her to look that way and I asked him to look this way. So everything was planned for it. And so rewriting the interviews and rearranging them as a script, it acts like a kind of reenactment. Do you know what reenactment is? Do you want to learn about reenactment? Yay, nay. I had 2 examples, but I'll just go for one. Another strike, yay! Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry. The image is really bad quality, but there's no good image of that project. It's so sad. Okay, so what is a reenactment? At its origin, reenactment is a hobby. It's like when you redo a military battle, like Waterloo, or I don't know, Lord of the Ring. And it was introduced in art in the early 2000s. Its fundamental elements are mimicry and repetition. And there's 2 practices in reenactment. There's a performance, like reenactment, performative reenactment. So let's say Marina Abramovic is redoing a performance she did in the 70s, but she's doing it at the MoMA in 2010. You heard about that, right? Yeah, I see you also. I see you. And there's also the historical reenactments. I'm more leaning toward the historical reenactments. It's my preference. So this image is a work by Peter Watkins. He's a British director. It's called La Commune, Paris 1871. Donc, the Commune, Paris, 1871. So the Commune is a moment between the fall of the monarchy and the first emperor of France, where people living in Paris, in the bourg of Paris, they just like blocked the access to Versailles and all the rich and monarchs, and they did their own collective government. And it lasted a couple of months, but they could like live between themselves and pushing away all of the aristocrats. So it was something. Like an anarchist government, like one of the first, I'd say. So here, Peter Watkins, what he does is that he does research. He hires non-actors, and he let them do their own research and develop their own characters that really were documented and existed. And he rented a huge studio, and he filmed a reenactment of all the events of La Commune, which results in a 6-hour movie that you can watch on YouTube if you want. It's in black and white. It's very fun if you need something to fall asleep. Honestly, it's a really good movie. It's just super long. I watched it like 3 times minimum. So here you see that the reconstruction is always based on a model, but the simulacrum relationship between the historical event and the reenactment is what is at the core of this type of practice in art. For youth pavilions, my model wasn't in the past. It was our relationship to the past that was built into present action. So I like to think about the interviews I did as a kind of reenactment because I'm not trying to reproduce what was happening in the 70s. I'm just collecting evidence to exemplify that these things are happening again now by themselves, and I'm just showing it, you know, like a documentary would do. And by using actors to play a formatted version of the interviews that I translated into a fake conversation, I insert my own voice, my own perception of a reenactment that is involuntary, so that I did not create on purpose, just that I'm showing, because it emerges from everyday life. It's also a process to create my own archive of what is happening at Le Récif. And it's the multi-voice aspect is flattened by the process of transcription and replay. And it has the potential to transform our collective memory of what was the communal experience of the 70s by creating new narrative. Expanding the narrative, you know. So I use a lot of archives in my work. And as I say, the interviews I did and the video I did can serve as a new archive. But archives, like actual archives, are a mean of mediation to the past. So there's this picture that was taken by a photojournalist during the 67 exhibition in Montreal. And it gives me access to this pavilion. You see it's written like Youth Pavilion. So it's the name of one of the pavilion in the exhibition. And, you know, it's the title of the show is based on that. But without the image, I cannot have a recall of the place or the event. But I have a recall of it because of like the residual image of it, but also the residual discourse of the people who lived that period. And I transformed it in this artwork. So I don't know if you can see, it's subtle, but I added an S to pavilion. So it's Z. So it's acting kind of as a glitch on the archive. And also there's, with this piece, I worked with the use of analog and digital technologies, because it's an analog picture that was scanned, and then I do a cyanotype, which is an analog technique for images. And also, by adding the S, I'm opening the meaning of the image and of the, you know, the title for many different versions of youth, of being young, of, you know, experimenting youngness. And we'll talk about this work here. So here we have two different images. There's the one in black and white is from a newspaper that was published in the 70s, and the other one in color is from footage that I took at Le Récif during my self-directed residency. Here. And I chose them because they were similar scenes, you know, young people sitting, just chit-chatting, you know, snacking, whatever. And yeah, I always like, and I placed them above a mirror. So there's an image on both faces of the paper, and I've placed them on a plinth above a mirror and with plexiglass layers in between. So when you look at it from above, you see like, oh, now and then. But when you look at it from the mirror, you see then over now. I don't know if you see it. It's hard to figure, but I'll go here. You see color, black and white over. So that's another idea, like another way of showing like, oh, okay, this idea of similarity, how can we read time? Is it like linear? Is it circular? Like another way also to have a means of mediation through archive. And another project that is not part of Youth Pavilion, maybe I'll skip on it, but it's another way of, I'll just go real quick over it. It's just another way of using archives as a mediation to another idea or like another period. So I found a mention of an event that happened in the 80s in France in a newspaper clip. And I had like minimum informations. The event was like a politician who stopped a debate by throwing tracts everywhere, leaflets, sorry. And I had no information about it, so I decided to rewrite it to replace the missing archives of it. So when I rewrite it, I'm not rewriting something that makes sense for this period. I'm writing something that makes sense for now. And yeah, I won't go too far on it because it gets complicated. So this acts as a discursive chain. So like a chain of discourses, a chain of speech, a chain of thoughts. And other ways I do that also is by writing text. Like this one is a composition that is written by, it's made from automatic writing. And it talks about like more like about my intention with the exhibition as a first person speaker. So not through archives or interviews. It's more of my voice, but also I mix words that are like terms that are associated with now and then. So like power flower, 70s, or like fuck the police state, like more now, but you know, 2019. Yeah, and I have another work that looks like it. This is something that was shown at the gallery of UQAM. And it works in the same way as it's a text that was, it's an assemblage of texts from different generations. So you have the first part is from Le Refus Global, which is a, important text in Quebec culture from 48, I think. And then some text that I took from Mamie's, the super cool magazine you have with you. Where are they? Oh, yeah. Weed Special. And some other texts that are from the student strike, and then more recent texts that were edited in 2018 when the work was done. And then I'm gonna end this by talking about the fact that the more I grow, the more I'm just thinking that I love documentary forms, and that working with archives serves that. And that maybe, like I'm saying in my statement, in my artist statement, I'm trying to develop a better understanding of how I can use the documentary form into the exhibition itself. Like it's mise en espace, it's a way to be installed or like arranged or as a medium in itself. Like how can the exhibition can be a documentary medium. And I'll finish with a last piece that neither of us can understand. because it's in Alsacien. It's I think it contributes to my research on documentary forms because it's a song I wrote with people I was taking. I was like, okay. So I did a residency in France. I was taking Alsatian classes, which is the German dialects, like pre-modern German dialects in France. It's very narrow, concentrated in this small region where they grow Gewürztraminer and Riesling, which is delicious. And so I proposed to them that we write a song together talking about our motive or their motive to relearn this language that is for some mother tongue or grandmother tongue that they just like forgot between generations. And it's a native language for some part of Alsace. So we did a song, and also it was played like by this mask, which is inspired by the Klappenstein. And the Klappenstein means it's the stone of bad mouth. So it's a thing that, it's really bad. It's a thing that women, when they were gossiping or bad-mouthing, they used to like walk into the village with it, and it was like super heavy, you know. So like the walk of shame with the Klappenstein. So I redid a Klappenstein because at some point in French history, when you were not speaking French, you were put aside, and they tried to assimilate everyone who wasn't speaking French, because there's many other languages than French in France. There are dialects. So yeah, do you want to listen to it? It's a little pop song.
Es tut mir leid, was ich mir doch gesagt, mach mich dort die Freiheit, red da meine Sprache, ich komm da nicht nach, red da meine Sprache, ich komm da nicht nach, Mama mir hat gesagt, Kind, es tut mir leid, was ich mir doch gesagt, mach mich dort die Freiheit, red da meine Sprache, ich komm da nicht nach, red da meine Sprache, ich komm da nicht nach. L'œil d'or in meine Mühle, l'œil des kleinen Männle, l'œil d'or in meine Mühle.
Do you see how German it is? It is like, it sounds also a bit like English, right? Minen, mine, Müll, mouth. Well, so yeah, so for me that's documentary and could be fun. And that's it. Thank you for listening to me.
That you think this is the last time you're going to be exhibiting Youth Pavilion.
Oh yeah.
Why?
Because I feel that the relationship we have with the older generation, the boomers, let's say, it really changed during COVID, like after COVID, because they got more vulnerable, they started to die, and yeah, I think it is so particular to this context of, you know, second half of the 2010s. So I think that's why. But we never know what can happen.
Yeah. And then the second part was, what projects are you developing now that you can talk about?
Oh my God. Okay. Right now, I'm working on another strike, which led to 2 dolphins dying in the Montreal aquarium, which is very sad because one of the dolphins was named Fanny, like me. And and I just want to, actually, I don't know, right now I don't know how I'll articulate all of that, but I want to make a commentary about strikes in the 20th century and how like union movements, artist unions, because there was like a couple in the 70s in the United States, how they maybe did not help to build a good image of artists as workers, and how we are workers and we just should be all protesting together and save the dolphins. But the dolphins for me could be because they gave a show, you know. They were giving a show, and we don't recognize giving doing a show like a job, like work. And the strike was for blue collars. So you have this distance between, you know, having more of a passionate work and manual work. And another thing I'm doing right now is that I'm learning to do chainmail, not like, hi, I'm a prince from Africa, and like the, you know, weaving with metal. And maybe that's a thing that I came from. I came from France with this idea because I really love medieval stuff. And also, I think it's not being used always the right way by alt-right groups and stuff. So I'm trying to figure how I can use that in another more, I think, positive way than white supremacy. And yeah. Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing it.
Chainmails? Yeah.
Did you find any difficulty in, especially earlier on in your art career, trying to get this type of work into galleries or to be shown?
Yeah, it's hard because I have a slow pace. I don't do many things. Like I can do maybe 2 or 3 artworks per year if I really, you know, work hard. And also, for me, I don't think like solo objects, I think exhibition. So what really helped me is to do many scales, like real object scales or like 3D online scales, like with SketchUp. It really helps to do that, or just small or big tests. But I don't know, like once you have your first chance, it goes well. It's just the first one that's so hard to get. Yeah.
I have a question around like impermanence, and I'm wondering about the communes, and you said that they tend to last like 10 years. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on like why that is, if it's like the exhaustion of external pressure, or I don't know.
Oh, I think there's like lots of different reasons. I think that for some people it's leadership, like the lack of or the need to be a leader in a group that is trying to dismantle this. Economically, it's hard. Also, I think lots of people who started these kind of communes, they are coming from backgrounds where they're outcasts, and they get together and they try to create their own little space that is safe because of this, but they don't necessarily have access to credit or jobs or, you know. But let's say at Le Récif, people were working outside, and it was like in between. It wasn't like the one from the 70s, even if the one from the 70s, it's very particular that it lasted 10 years. Normally it lasts like 5 max. Yeah.
Sorry, on a similar vein, I'm interested in your textbooks and how you create them, and if you, like, what it means to like destroy the work when you deinstall it, or like how do you think about those works, like, the permanence of them?
Yeah, okay, so yeah, impermanence. I love big stuff, but I don't like to store stuff in my studio. So I'm always trying to work with reduced materials and reduced objects, because I don't like objects that much. And these texts are made out of a stencil that is laser cut in Sintra. It's like a type of plastic, micro bubble plastic. And then I take gyps compound with color and I gyps it, you know. So then after, when I have to uninstall it, and ooh, this is louder like that. And this is the same thing. I just like take a spatula, like a plaster spatula, and I scrape it. And it makes, it goes to dust. Yeah. And how I mix the color, it's like, it's really fun to work with because it's like icing, you know? So I mix the color, I have like my different colors and I have my white icing and I just like mix them together. I do a nice marbling and then directly on this, over the stencil, and then I take back the stencil, let it dry, clean it, and voila, that's done. And here too, it's a gyps compound, but it's different because I was in Europe and they don't have the same stuff. Like if you ever do a residency in Europe, be careful because that did not go well. When I had to scrape it, it was glued to the wall. We had to sand the whole freaking wall. But the technician was like, oh, I had worse than this. So that's cool. Phew. Yeah. Thank you.